Margaret Chen had built her empire on cold calculations and quarterly reports, but as she watched through her corner office window on the 15th floor, something warm and unfamiliar twisted in her chest. Below in the courtyard, her 6-year-old twins Emma and Lucas were laughing as they drummed on upturned mop buckets with a janitor she'd never bothered to notice. The sound of their joy couldn't reach her through the reinforced glass, but she could see it in their faces, in the way their small hands moved in perfect rhythm, in how their eyes sparkled with a light she hadn't seen since the day the doctor confirmed what she'd already suspected. Her children would never hear her voice, never hear music, never hear the simple sounds that most people took for granted. Margaret pressed her palm against the cool window, her Cartier watch catching the afternoon light. 3 years had passed since the diagnosis. 3 years of specialists and therapies, of learning sign language between board meetings, of carrying a weight that made her billion-dollar company feel light as paper. She'd given her children everything money could buy: the best schools, the finest hearing aids, private tutors, but she couldn't give them what they needed most. She couldn't give them a world that understood. Yet here they were, drumming away with a janitor whose name she didn't even know, their faces radiant with pure happiness. The intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Chen, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Margaret didn't move from the window. "Cancel it, Mom. You heard me. Cancel the meeting." For the first time in 15 years of running Chemtech Industries, Margaret Chen walked away from a board meeting to chase something more important than profit margins. She took the elevator down to the ground floor, her heels clicking against the marble as she pushed through the glass doors into the courtyard. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and something else, hope, maybe, though she'd forgotten what that smelled like. "Mama." Emma signed excitedly when she spotted her, her small hands flying through the gestures Margaret had learned to read like a second language. "Look what Mr. Danny taught us." The janitor Danny, apparently, looked up from where he knelt beside the makeshift drum set. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with kind eyes and work-worn hands that moved with surprising grace as he signed back to Emma. "I hope it's okay," he said aloud while signing simultaneously, his voice carrying a slight nervous tremor. "They seemed interested when they saw me cleaning, and I thought." He trailed off, suddenly seeming to remember who he was talking to. Margaret had never learned that some of her employees were fluent in sign language. She'd never thought to ask. "You know ASL," she said, and it wasn't quite a question. Danny nodded. "My little sister was born deaf." "These two remind me of Hera. Same curiosity, same joy in everything." He smiled at the twins, who were now experimenting with different rhythms on their buckets. "They've got natural rhythm, real musical talent." Something sharp lodged itself in Margaret's throat. Musical talent. She'd never thought of it that way either, that her children, who lived in silence, could still create music. "Would you mind if I watched?" she asked, surprising herself with the request. For the next hour, Margaret Chen sat on a concrete bench and watched her children discover rhythm and joy with a janitor who made $12 an hour but possessed something she'd lost somewhere between her first merger and her last divorce: the ability to see magic in ordinary moments. Danny had created an entire percussion orchestra from cleaning supplies of buckets of different sizes for different tones, wooden spoons for drumsticks, even a spray bottle that made a perfect cymbal sound when struck just right. He taught the twins complex rhythms, their small faces scrunched in concentration as they tried to match his movements. But it wasn't just the drumming that held Margaret transfixed. It was watching Danny communicate with her child Rena, really communicate. He didn't speak slowly or treat them differently. He didn't wear the pitying expression Margaret had grown to hate from teachers and strangers. Instead, he signed with fluid confidence, making jokes that sent Emma into silent giggles and teaching Lucas drumming techniques with the patience of someone who understood that some lessons couldn't be rushed. "How long have you worked here?" Margaret asked during a break when the twins were examining their new instruments. 8 months, Danny replied, wiping his hands on his work shirt. "Night shift. Usually, I'm studying during the day, working on my degree in deaf education." "Deaf education?" He nodded. "Want to teach music to deaf kids." "People think it's impossible, but it's not. Music isn't just sound, it's vibration. It's movement, it's feeling the beat in your whole body." He gestured to where Emma was feeling the vibrations of her bucket drum by pressing her ear against it. "Your kids get it instinctively." Margaret watched her daughter's face light up as she discovered how the different sized containers created different feelings against her skin. "I never knew they could." "Could what?" "Experience music." Danny's voice was gentle, not judgmental. "Mrs. Chen, your kids experience music every day. They just do it differently than hearing people." The words hit Margaret like a physical blow, not painful, but transformative, like a reset button on everything she thought she understood about her children's limitations. That evening, after Danny had returned to his cleaning duties and Margaret had driven the twins home to their mansion in the hills, she found herself standing in their playroom, really looking at it for the first time in months. Expensive toys lined the shelves, educational games recommended by specialists, high-tech devices designed to help deaf children integrate into a hearing world. Everything was beige and sterile and focused on fixing what was supposedly broken. But her children weren't broken. They were different, and difference wasn't a deficit to be corrected, it was a gift to be celebrated. The next morning, Margaret called Danny into her office. He appeared at the door in his uniform, nervously turning his cap in his hands. "Am I in trouble, Mrs. Chen? I know I shouldn't have been playing with your kids during work hours, but they seemed so interested, and I just thought Danny." Margaret's voice was firm but warm. "Sit down." He perched on the edge of the chair across from her desk, still looking like he expected to be fired. "I want to offer you a position," Margaret said. "Full-time, benefits, salary that will let you finish your degree without working nights." Danny's eyes widened. "I don't understand." "I want you to start a music program here at Chemtech, for employees' children. Not just deaf kids, all kids. But I want you to design something special for children like Emma and Lucas. I want them to know that music belongs to them too." Tears gathered in Danny's eyes. "Mrs. Chen, That's incredibly generous, but I'm not qualified to run a whole program. I'm still a student. I don't have the credentials." "You have something better than credentials," Margaret interrupted. "You have the gift of seeing my children for who they are, not who they can't be. You showed them that their world isn't smaller than everyone else's, it's just different. And that difference is beautiful." 6 months later, the Chemtech Children's Music Center opened its doors. Danny, now the program director, had designed a curriculum that used vibration, movement, and visual cues to make music accessible to children of all abilities. The center's inaugural concert featured Emma and Lucas Chen performing a drum duet. They'd composed theme Silvers, a complex rhythm piece that brought the audience to their feet in thunderous applause they couldn't hear but could feel thrumming through the floor. Margaret sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she watched her children bow to a standing ovation. But the moment that stopped her cold came afterward, when Emma ran to the microphone and signed something that Danny translated for the audience. She says, "Thank you for listening with your hearts instead of just your ears." In that moment, Margaret understood that the greatest gift wasn't what she'd given Danny, or even what Danny had given her children. It was what her children had given Hera the chance to see the world through eyes unclouded by assumptions about what was possible. The janitor who played buckets with her deaf twins had shown her that sometimes the most profound changes come not from boardroom decisions or quarterly strategies, but from one person choosing to see magic where others see only limitations. Sometimes it takes a stranger with kind eyes and patient hands to remind us that love doesn't need to be heard to be felt, and that musical like hope lives not in the ears but in the heart.